It was perhaps the greatest debut match for any wrestler in history. When Ronda Rousey teamed with Kurt Angle to defeat Triple H and Stephanie McMahon at WrestleMania 34, fan and critical consensus was that Rousey's first wrestling match was a smashing success. It seemed that perhaps the most famous women's mixed martial artist on the planet had a bright future in sports entertainment. Rousey's celebrity status and one-of-a-kind athletic ability both bring much to the WWE table, giving the women's division a heavy dose of mainstream power. Her dominant runs through Strikeforce and UFC turned her into an undeniable sensation, and given her devout pro wrestling fandom, a chance to make her the centerpiece of WWE's women's revolution was music to the ears of multiple parties. As regular WWE fans are beginning to get used to having more of Rowdy Ronda in their lives, let's take a look at 10 facts that even a faithful UFC fan may not have known about Ronda Rousey. I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Ronda Rousey. Join us! Number 10, an early obstacle. When Rousey was born in early 1987, her birth presented her with a troubling complication. Her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck as she was being birthed, causing a condition known as apraxia, a disorder in which the brain struggles to move the body parts necessary for coherent speech. According to a 2015 Rolling Stone profile on Rousey, she spoke in mumbles at a young age. There was a fear that she may have had brain damage and would never be able to speak an intelligible sentence, and she would sometimes rely on her sisters to help her interpret things. When Rousey was 3 years old, she moved with her parents to Jamestown, North Dakota, in order to be closer to the state university, whose speech therapists would gradually help Rousey overcome her condition. Rousey would end up, by all accounts, excelling in school, and her charismatic public persona shows no signs of someone that ever struggled with a frustrating speech disorder. Number 9, it runs in the family. Professional wrestling is filled with second and third generation icons, be they Bret Hart, Macho Man Randy Savage, or The Rock. All three have become stars whose iconography would surpass their legendary fathers. Rousey herself is a second-generation star in the world of martial arts, but it wasn't her father Ronald that was the fighter of the house. Rousey's mother, Anne-Maria DeMars, is an accomplished judoka in her own right, having become the first American to take the gold medal in a World Judo Championship, which she accomplished in 1984, 3 years before Ronda was born. DeMars took up the discipline of judo at age 12 and even trained as an exchange student in Japan at the age of 18. But she was more than just a skilled fighter. She also earned her MBA at the University of Minnesota in 1980 and a master's and PhD at the University of California, Riverside shortly after. Now that is versatility. Number 8, an early break. Having a mother like DeMars, who's said to be freakishly competitive and resolute, has its advantages if you're a kid looking to follow into the world of martial arts. Rousey recalls that her mother used to pounce on her in her sleep, waking her up to test Ronda's defensive reflexes, to always be ready no matter the situation. I'm guessing the family saved money on alarm clocks, certainly. But DeMars would one day learn just how tough her offspring truly was. It was at a dojo in Los Angeles when Rousey was around 13 years old when DeMars, a former world judo champion remember, apparently underestimated the skill level of her teenage daughter. She put her arm out to Rousey to allow her a throw attempt, not thinking she was going to be tossed over. Well, you may be surprised to learn, just as DeMars certainly was, that Rousey was able to throw her mother. In the process, the landing fractured DeMars' wrist, which Ronda claims to her mother's credit that she no-sold, and it was allegedly the last time that DeMars ever tested her daughter at the dojo. Number 7, Maid of Medal. Women's judo became an Olympic sport in 1992. By the event's fourth staging at the Athens Games in 2004, Rousey competed on the global stage at just 17 years of age. There, she would lose to eventual silver medalist Claudia Heil of Austria in her first match, but 2004 would not be Rousey's last attempt to obtain an Olympic medal. Rousey qualified for the Games once more in 2008, this time in Beijing. She would lose a quarterfinal match to Edith Bosch of Holland, but she'd end up qualifying for a bronze medal match. Rousey, unsurprisingly, took full advantage of the second chance. This makes Rousey the second medal-winning Olympic judoka to compete in a WWE ring, following Bad News Brown, who took home the bronze in 1976. Number 6, the struggle. Winning Olympic gold didn't exactly change Rousey's fortunes immediately. As to use an old quip, it took more than a few years for her to become an overnight success. At one point, between the Olympics and Rousey's rise to MMA glory, she worked 3 jobs as a bartender and cocktail waitress to make ends meet. She also resorted to living in her 2005 Honda Accord LX with her dog. Even into 2015, as Rousey was becoming one of the preeminent faces of the UFC, she still had the Accord, even as its odometer had rolled past the 156,000-mile mark. She would eventually put the car, wrecked transmission and all, up for auction on eBay. In the end, the diminished vehicle, along with some personal effects inside the car, sold for $21,300. If Rousey could have pulled together that kind of scratch for the car back when she was a struggling hopeful in her early 20s, perhaps she would have sold it much sooner. Number 5. A Rowdy Connection. The influence of Rowdy Roddy Piper upon Ronda Rousey's WWE identity is obvious. From the co-opting of the Rowdy nickname, to the similarly designed t-shirt, to the wearing of the kilt at WrestleMania 34. Rousey's appearance at the Royal Rumble with some of the Piper imagery offended a few viewers that didn't know the backstory. Several years before Piper's 2015 passing, Ronda and the Hot Rod were brought together by shared mentor and MMA icon Gene LaBelle, teacher of many martial artists including Chuck Norris, and currently the baddest 85-year-old walking the planet. It was LaBelle that reached out to Piper, acting as a go-between for Rousey and the wrestling great, as Rousey sought Piper's blessing to use the Rowdy nickname. Piper, per his account in an interview, was all for it, excited to see his name live on with such a promising young talent. Rousey's final UFC win would come the day after Piper's 2015 passing, which she would dedicate to his memory and friendship. Number 4. She's not paid by the hour. Rousey would compete in 14 professional fights between March 2011 and December 2016, winning the first 12 of those battles. In fairness, calling them battles may be a bit generous, since most of these fights were as one-sided as Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss on a seesaw. Rousey's early fame was predicated on her capacity to be a fast finisher. Of those 12 victories, 8 of those fights didn't get past 1 minute. Promising talents like Sarah Kaufman, Kat Zingano, Beth Correa, and others all felt the wrath of Rousey in under 60 seconds. What makes most of those wins all the more impressive is that 6 of them came via submission, as opposed to a sudden knockout strike. Additionally, of Rousey's 12 wins, only 1 of those opponents made it past the first round, that being her noted rival, Miesha Tate. Tate lasted into the 3rd round of their anticipated fight at UFC 168, before succumbing, as most others have, to Rousey's armbar. Number 3. A really fast finish. The prior entry made mention of Kat Zingano as one of Rousey's sub-1 minute victims. Zingano challenged for Rousey's UFC Women's Bantamweight title in February 2015, going into that fight at a perfect 9-0. Her last win before challenging for Rousey's gold came over the indomitable Amanda Nunes, who would later go on to win the Bantamweight title in 2016 and has held it since. As for the Rousey-Zingano fight, you already know that Rousey won quickly, but it was also historically quick. Rousey would tap her to a straight armbar in 14 seconds, which at the time made it the fastest title fight finish in UFC history. Conor McGregor would actually break the record by 1 second when he knocked out Jose Aldo in their historic clash 10 months later. Nonetheless, Rousey still holds the record for fastest win in a women's title fight and a fastest submission victory in a title fight for either gender. Number 2. The Queen of Pay-Per-View. Rousey's unblemished record as a UFC fighter received its first smudge at UFC 193 on November 15, 2015, when Holly Holm knocked her out in the 2nd round of a title match in what was considered a monumental upset. The fight drew a whopping 56,000 fans to Melbourne's Etihad Stadium, which stands as the largest crowd in UFC history. But it wouldn't be the only record that Rousey would be able to lay claim to. The Rousey Holm main event drew 1.1 million buys on pay-per-view, making it the first time that a UFC pay-per-view with a women's main event topped the 1 million buy mark. The only WWE pay-per-views that have ever done north of 1.1 million buys were WrestleManias 23 and 28, while Rousey Home is the 8th most bought pay-per-view in the history of UFC. The event itself was good for $60 million in revenue, and some may credit the event's success to Stephanie McMahon having invented women's wrestling just 4 months earlier, but that's open for debate. At number 1, the greatest helping hand. It's weird to see WWE personalities openly refer to UFC by name these days. When Brock Lesnar won the UFC heavyweight belt in 2008, WWE posted a bizarre news release on their website noting Lesnar's win, while also for some reason passive-aggressively taking shots at UFC's pay-per-view model. After Lesnar and Undertaker had an altercation at UFC 121 in 2010, UFC President Dana White made it clear that Lesnar would not be working WrestleMania with the Dead Man. This sort of coldness between the two entities existed for some time. That's why it was a bit surprising to see Rousey show up at WrestleMania 31 and help The Rock put a whooping on the Authority. Though there were inklings that White was resistant to let Rousey do anything WWE related while under contract, it was The Rock himself who convinced him to let it happen. Rock and Rousey flew in on a charter flight to Santa Clara from New York in the early morning hours of WrestleMania Sunday, and Rock had just hosted Saturday Night Live the night before. The pair went straight to Levi Stadium where they began rehearsing their segment on minimal sleep. Thus, the initial WWE Rousey connection was forged with the aid of the Great One. And that's our list. I've been Sam from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter here. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. If you like what we do here at Cultaholic, you can check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And don't ever forget to hit subscribe and join us.
Hello, I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic.com, and as you may be aware, we beat the WrestleTwats in our SummerSlam predictions contest. As you may also be aware, this means that all 3 members of the WrestleTalk team have to perform a live lip-sync concert at the Wrestling MediaCon in Manchester. I can't wait.
On top of the Cultaholic vs WrestleTalk live show, there's also live wrestling from Impact, Rev Pro, NJPW, and Defiant, as well as live panels involving the likes of Dave Meltzer, Colt Cabana, Sean Walton, and a whole range of incredible guests.
Tickets are available now from WrestlingMediaCon.com. Ollie Davis, I hate you.